Hi, welcome back to Third Academy's Metaverse Campus Lounge. And welcome to our space on the future of work in the Metaverse. We're excited to have Tara join us today to discuss this cutting edge topic. And as we are all familiar with the space, we know that the future of work is changing rapidly, and the metaverse is poised to play a major role in shaping it. And don't worry if you're just hearing about the metaverse for the first time. It's a virtual world like where we are right now, each other, profound impact on the way that we work, from the jobs that we do, and the way that we collaborate with others. And today we have Tara, who will be discussing this topic with us and giving us her own opinion on what she thinks about the future of work in the metaverse. Thank you, Tara, for joining us today, and we're eager to hear your insights on this topic. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, and let's get to meet you.
Definitely. Well, hi everyone. My name is Tara Annison. I head up product for TwinStake, which is an institutional staking firm. Don't worry if most of what I just said sounds a bit infrastructure tech heavy. I am also a pretty prolific metaverse wanderer. I spend a lot of my time heading around Decentraland or Sandbox, or just generally kind of dipping into virtual spaces. I spend way too much time in my VR headset. In fact, my legs are still recovering from a VR workout I did on Monday, which I highly recommend to everyone. And I also spend a lot of my time thinking about metaverse crime. So because I spend a lot of time in the metaverse, and I've spent the last 4-ish years before my current role in the world of crypto compliance, I spend a good amount of time talking to companies, brands, international police forces, you name it, all around how the metaverse can be used for both the good, the bad, and even the ugly as well.
Interesting. And I really think that you're the from your experience and what you have just said, I believe that you're going to share so much valuable insights for our space today. And to quickly jump into like the first question that I have for you is just like maybe how do you envision like the metaverse shaping the future of work for in this case web3 professionals? What in your opinion, what specific skill and knowledge would be most valuable to help them make this transition?
It's a really good question. I think the best way to think about this is really the same situation as with the internet, when that kind of really started to impact people's lives. It went from more being used, and computers were being used in universities, to having them in the home and then the workplace. And so initially it kind of starts creeping around the edges, and a few people are involved, and you've got some novel ideas, and then eventually it will just be part and parcel of our everyday lives. So if we take the kind of broad umbrella of what the metaverse means, whether that's virtual worlds, augmented reality, virtual reality, AI, crypto, everything that fits under there, I think for a large degree we're already kind of living in the metaverse, because these are tools and technologies which we use every day, but not everyone uses them every day. So like the internet, I think we'll start to see people tinkering and getting involved in metaverse adjacent roles and jobs. And then it will start becoming more and more. We'll start getting jobs which become literally in the metaverse, in the same way that, had I have even if I say to my gran right now, I talk to her about social media influencers or people doing search engine optimization, like all of these are internet-based jobs that can only exist because of the internet. And she definitely couldn't have imagined them. And I think other people would have struggled to imagine them when the internet first came around. So I think when we look at the metaverse now, and we're thinking about how the metaverse could shape the future of work for anyone in the Web3 space, there's a lot that we just cannot imagine right now, because we're still at the infancy of the metaverse. And so I think what you touch on there in terms of the specific skills and knowledge that's going to be important for this, I think actually the skills and knowledge are not really that metaverse specific. I think if you are going to succeed in a metaverse based world and workplace going forward, you need to be open to learning new things. This industry changes super fast. You know, if you are away for the weekend and don't read the Web3 news, you feel like you've missed a decade. So you need to have that openness to learning new things, that curiosity about what's changing, what's beginning in the industry. You need to, I'd say, embrace the potential for failure, because we are at the outset of a new industry and there's going to be lots of false starts. There'll be companies that don't work. There'll be use cases that just fundamentally aren't going anywhere. And so if you're going to succeed in Web3, and if you're going to succeed in the metaverse at large, you need to go in with that understanding that things potentially won't work out as well as we hope, but there'll be a lot of successes. And then on the knowledge side, again, I don't think it's specifically kind of crypto knowledge or metaverse knowledge you need. And that might surprise some people when I say that. But in the same way that you don't need to understand how the internet or Wi-Fi works to work in like an internet-based company like Deliveroo, let's say, I think for most people, their existing skills, their existing knowledge are actually, they're likely already completely ideal for a job in this hyper digitalized world around us and the kind of meta jobs of the future. So I wouldn't say it's important for everyone to go and learn the intricacies of like proof of work versus proof of stake consensus mechanisms or how large language model works. We're still going to need the knowledge and skills people have from doing their Web 2, their IRL jobs, and how we transition those into the metaverse.
Morning. We haven't started streaming yet, have we? We started at 9.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, I was speaking. I don't know what happened. I guess that was a glitch, but yeah, sorry about that. So like I was saying, Tara, I said I really like the response that you gave about these skills not really being metaverse specific in quotes, right? And just having that openness to learning, right? And I was giving an example. Let's say someone who has been a successful marketer in Web 2, for instance, and they're trying to transition right into Web 3. They don't really need to have like any specific Web 3 skill, right? So the experience and the knowledge that they have for Web 2, just having that openness to learning, staying up to date, someone who is actually interested in building a career in that aspect, they actually have all that they need, right? And one thing that I love so much about Web 3 and building a career here is that there's so much learning on the job, to be done, right? There's so much learning on the job that you would do. And I find that really interesting. And I also love the comparison with the internet, right? And how it's gradually, the metaverse is gradually becoming more mainstream. But can you share like some real world examples of how you've seen Web 3 projects utilizing the metaverse for work?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a lot of people maybe thinking, oh, the metaverse is dead. Who's really building in it, exploring it? There's actually loads of companies that are exploring how they can use the metaverse for work. And that's both the metaverse to do work in, so using it as an enhancement, using the technologies to make their lives easier, but using it to do the services or sell the products that they do in a slightly new way. So I'll talk about a couple of instances here because I think it's important to look at both angles. So you've got companies that are incredibly well known, like lots of fashion brands, for instance, who took part in the Metaverse Fashion Week this year. So Decentraland do a Metaverse Fashion Week every year. And it's very much all about bringing people in, giving them a really exciting, different way to look at fashion, to experience fashion shows, and to buy digital fashion. Now, in there, you had, the likes of Tommy Hilfiger, Cider, Adidas, Forever 21, loads of kind of premium brands as well as more high street brands. And they were showcasing to a brand new generation. They were making people aware of their brands who weren't necessarily aware of them. Like I had never come across Cider, for instance. Now I see them everywhere on Instagram. But I saw them first in Decentraland Fashion Week. They were selling items, and maybe I'll touch on that for a second. But when we think about kind of utilizing the metaverse for work, exactly what you were just saying there, Rita, they were using it for essentially advertising. They were getting their brand out there in a space that was attracting maybe a slightly different demographic, or just like hitting new target markets. So definitely from like an advertising marketing perspective, I think there's a way of viewing the metaverse virtual worlds as an additional platform in the same way that we did with Facebook and then to Instagram and now TikTok. We'll have people and brands certainly creating strategies about, well, what are we going to do in the metaverse for this product launch? Or how are we going to showcase this product on a multi-channel kind of brand like plan? What are we doing at Decentraland? Are we doing anything in Sandbox? What are we doing with augmented reality? Are we doing anything inside a virtual world that can be used in a VR headset? So I think that advertising element is really key, and selling is another one. Like when I was at the Decentraland Metaverse Fashion Week, I bought a really nice wearable dress. It was from I think it was from a creator that's a wearable creator in just the metaverse. There's also creators that create phygital items, so ones that you can wear in both the virtual world as well as the real world. Then you have physical items, and actually Cider's an interesting shop. In the metaverse, they have a stall that is created by Boson Labs or Boson Protocol, and you can buy a pair of shoes in the metaverse, but they are real shoes that get delivered to your actual house. So they're using the metaverse there as a kind of an addition to this idea of online shopping, but instead of going on a website, you go in the metaverse. So I think there's again a transition or a progression from kind of brick and mortar being the only option to then this idea of online shopping, and now soon we're going to have kind of metaverse shopping. And you could even go further from that than just in virtual world shopping. There's the ability to use augmented reality, this the classic idea often is shown of like a mirror that you kind of stand in front of it and you can swipe to see different clothes on you, and then if you like it you can kind of like tap buy on the mirror and then those clothes will be delivered. So having that hyper digitalization and using that digital experience would allow those brands, those companies to utilize the metaverse for their work, which is selling clothes. There's also, and then maybe I'll just talk about one more, because, I could talk about so many examples because there really are a lot going on. But another one I think which is worth saying is more on that first item that I spoke about. So using metaverse adjacent technologies to help us do our jobs better. Now, again, I think there's a easy comparison here in terms of when we used to transcribe or write meeting notes or create any kind of correspondence in the workplace environment, you had someone, traditionally a woman, who would type it up or write it down, but they would type it up in a typewriter. And then we got computers, and that allowed everything to be done so much quicker. Then we got computers with spell check, and that improved it even more. And so I think we're going to see a very similar process where more tech is infused in our work lives. So it could be using augmented reality for training purposes, like if you're an electrician, where it can be dangerous to learn which cords to cut. If you are a doctor and you want to practice a life and death style operation, then being able to do that in augmented reality or even virtual reality would allow you to kind of safely simulate that. And there's, Meta are doing a big push on this. That's their big thing about their VR headsets, is using them in those workplace environments. And like that, you also have the collaboration element with this as well. So I think we all know that Zoom and other platforms are available, but Zoom is great, let's be honest, but it's not great when you want to like really interact with people. And so using metaverse adjacent technologies, whether it's a VR headset, meeting people in Horizon workspaces, maybe it's going into, say, Decentraland in a space and collaborating there, being able to use metaverse related technologies just gives you a much richer, much more engaging, much more interactive experience. And that's something that I think is really key when we consider the world of work and being able to interact and collaborate with our colleagues in potentially a more remote setting with people based all around the world. So I think they're really good examples of where the metaverse and metaverse technologies will help us kind of do our existing jobs better, but also potentially create brand new jobs as well.
Well, I think you have given so many interesting take, and I for one, I would, I would surely, be willing to explore like a metaverse shopping, right? Because I think that would be more fun and more engaging. But then, are there privacy concerns that you think that we should be aware of, despite like all of this innovation that's coming up when it comes to like using the metaverse?
Definitely. So I think with any new exciting innovation, there will always be those that try and use it for illicit or nefarious purposes. And certainly when we think about the privacy element in the metaverse, there's a lot of crossovers with actually social media, the challenges with the internet at large. Basically, it's an awful lot of data that is being collected around you. It's about the apps that you're using, what you're doing on them, how you're using them. The hardware itself creates and collects a lot of information around you. There was some really interesting reports and research that came out not too long ago about all the information that is collected when you use one of Meta's VR headset, and it can provide information about kind of the mapping of your face as well, like how far apart your eyes are, for instance. So even biometric data can be collected. Now, of course, in the wrong hands, that could be dangerous data for someone to have. But it also could just mean you get a lot more ads given to you as well. Just like, with social media, it collects a lot of information, it serves you loads of ads. So from a privacy perspective, and certainly thinking about that within the GDPR situation in the UK, in Europe rather, there's potential risks there. From a security perspective, you've got everything from bad hardware that could be dangerous. So, a strain on your eyes, it could be uncomfortable, it could be hackable, for instance. We need to be thinking about how we safely store data because, as I said, there's a lot of data being collected here. But if we specifically consider, I think, the metaverse work experiment or the experience rather, where if we're going to be creating documents in there, we're going to be having meetings about sensitive company information, then we need to be thinking about how do we have spaces in the metaverse to ensure that is safe and secure. Exactly in the same way that when people started working on laptops and phones more, then companies had to think about, well, do we have a managed software solution? Do we allow our employees to use their own phone, or should we provide a phone for them that has kind of a lockdown situation where if it gets lost or stolen, or there's certain apps you can't access? So I think we will see that transition when more companies start using metaverse related technologies. There will be kind of enterprise setups to make sure that both employees and the kind of information and services that they're using are safe.
Interesting. And I believe that addressing this concern is really crucial for building, safe and secure space that can be trusted for work and collaboration. All right. So if you have been listening to us, we're live at the Third Academy's Metaverse Campus Lounge, and we have Tara. And today we're talking about the future of work in the metaverse. It has been a very interesting space so far. We've talked about what skills that you need to transition, and Tara mentioned that it is not metaverse specific skill that you really need to make the transition in your career. And she also mentioned so much more, and if you think that would be of interest to you, you can always go back to the recording. This recording will always be live at the Third Academy's YouTube channel. Now, with regards to what earlier you mentioned that there's not really metaverse specific quote in quotes, skill that you need. You still need to understand like the basis and the foundational knowledge, right, to be able to excel in your career. Do you think that Web3 professionals need to prepare for this shift, right? So how can professionals prepare? Is there a need to prepare for the shift towards like metaverse based work, or what can be done, for someone who is interested in exploring the metaverse? Because for instance, in our community, we just finished the 5 weeks community management course, and during one of the assessment section, and we're planning to launch like a community managers guild, in the metaverse, community managers for like metaverse communities, for brand building, metaverse communities. And someone asked me, and impact of like the metaverse.
I think I've lost a little bit of your sound.
Yeah, it looks like she lost her sound. In the meantime, I have a question, Tara. The question is, in the future of work with the metaverse, how does the Microsoft Mesh, or whatever the product they have now, that looks at work and establishing meetings in the metaverse and breakout rooms and all that kind of business-oriented meetings fit into what you're talking about?
So yeah, I think it's really, really intertwined. So if you look at how we do, or how we did meetings largely pre-pandemic, it was very in person. You would kind of travel for a meeting, potentially to be in there for like half an hour, wrap up, and then head back to the office, head home. With the pandemic, we really kind of embraced a world of 2D virtual meetings. Now they're great for a lot of purposes, but I think it's pretty universally acknowledged that it's not great for building relationships, having a kind of conversation where you can really get a sense of what someone is feeling and thinking. And so that's what one thing which actually kind of the virtual workspaces like Meta's Horizon World, or is being built out by a whole host of other companies like Microsoft. All they're really trying to do is simulate a little bit better the experience that you get when you are kind of looking in someone's eyes across the room. You can see their body language. You can have kind of side conversations, a little whisper to the person next to you, or pass a note between you. And so a lot of these virtual meeting spaces are basically looking to give you that experience in different ways. You've got, Meta are looking at, I can't remember what it's called now, I think it's Portal Plus or something, but it's basically a hologram which would allow you to kind of be much more present in a meeting. You've got the VR meetings where you can have like spatial sound, for instance, like you guys have in this metaverse. So the closer I am to someone, the more I'll hear them. If I walk away, I'll get a bit quieter. So all those are really looking to simulate kind of real life aspects, which make interaction much easier. And I think just like with social media or even greengrocers, actually, there won't just be one winner. There won't be one metaverse-based platform for meetings. There'll be a whole range which have different features, functionalities. Some you might like more if your meeting is using a kind of whiteboard-esque approach and you want to be more hands-on. Some you might prefer if it's a huge meeting, kind of town hall style. Others might feel a bit more personal. So I think what's really great about all of these developments is we're going to get lots of options and allow us to kind of communicate in a way which feels more kind of human to us, whether that's from a cultural perspective, a tech perspective, an age perspective, but they're all looking at basically giving us the option to interact online, but in a way which feels more real.
I'm not so familiar with those spaces yet. Do they have like this space a way to click a camera and actually have a person's head appear above their avatar? Because right now,
Yeah,
this world has that.
Yeah, so I went to, I'm trying to think which metaverse it was in, because as I think you can guess, I spend a lot of time in a lot of metaverses. But I went to a virtual gallery opening actually once. And so there's all these NFTs on the walls. There's these quite cool sculptures in the room. And I went in just with my Ready Player Me avatar, but some users were in there with their avatar and then a camera above their head. So you could see their actual facial expressions with a kind of a real representation of their face. It would be, possible tech-wise, certainly if you were in VR, kind of using motion capture maybe to allow your avatar face to move a little bit more. So that could be a nice kind of hybrid way. So yeah, different metaverses are taking different approaches, whether it's just your avatar, which can feel a little bit like talking to a painting. So that's quite difficult. Some will, yeah, like I say, throw a kind of live stream of your face above, and there's all sorts of really cool tech solutions, which I think we'll see that kind of pull a hybrid of those.
Yeah, are these other platforms, are they aiming at any particular market, or is it just a general business conference, business meeting gathering?
Yeah, really good question. So most metaverses right now seem to be taking the kind of classic approach, which is like, we're kind of for everyone, for everything. So staying really broad, very much, I think, from a sensible perspective, because you do have a limited number of people using virtual worlds right now. Like if you look at the stats of Decentraland, for instance, it's a couple of thousand active at any one time. The sandbox is very misleading. It can look completely dead most of the time, but when there's a season, then it's super busy. Then if you look at what could arguably be considered a metaverse, like Roblox, for instance, you've got millions of daily active users. Now, with all of them, like, some are slightly more tailored towards gaming, like Roblox, Minecraft, for instance. Some are more exploration, like Decentraland, again, and Sandbox, which are quite events driven. Some platforms look to provide you with the ability to kind of create your own metaverse and use it however you wish. So I presented a while back in Interpol's metaverse. So that's not open metaverse, it's their own one, but they created that solely for the purpose of conferences. So you go in there, you can kind of sit on all these seats, go up on the stage and present, but that's all it's for. You'll have other metaverses which are very much building themselves around the social aspect. Some will be around the education aspect. So right now, most metaverses are kind of saying, we will be whatever you need or want us to be, because it's all about trying to attract people in. Again, very similar to social media initially. Facebook just said, we are the platform to meet your friends, whether you want to organize an event with them, chat with them, share photos with them. We're the platform to do all of that. And then we started getting specialties of, oh, well, actually, if you want to share photos with friends, maybe not Facebook, maybe let's go really specific on Instagram. And then it's like, oh, you want to share conversations with friends, but do you want to do that in really short, kind of 40 characters? Well, we've got Twitter. Oh, you want to share video with friends? No, not Facebook. We have a separate app. That's TikTok. So I think we're now in that generalist stage, and we'll be moving towards a specialist stage as we get more people using the metaverse and virtual worlds, and we get more specific use cases.
Good answer. I just have one more question. And the question is VR headsets versus on browser, on with an app, or through a phone, or through a mobile application. How do you see VR fitting into this kind of meeting in the metaverse world? It's especially since a lot of statistics I've seen shows that people don't like to wear VR headsets for very long. And if a meeting runs an hour, that creates kind of a problem for everybody sitting with a VR headset on. What do you think about VR headsets in this kind of space?
So I definitely sit on the other side of the fence in terms of my VR headset battery runs out way before I want to take it off. So I will happily be in VR until I get the little flickering red light and it dies. But I definitely get your point that for many people it's uncomfortable, it feels unfamiliar to have it on there. I spend a pretty even split actually across metaverse and virtual world spaces where it's browser like this, and then in VR. Now, if I think of, for instance, Metaverse Music Festival that happens in Decentraland each year, that is completely browser based. There's no VR. I have gone to I've seen Ozzy Osbourne, I've seen the Stickmen perform, I've seen Dylan Francis. I've got friends in there that I feel I interact with. And a lot of that actually comes from, even when you're not using a VR headset, emotes. Like emotes make a massive difference in kind of conveying how you're feeling. And certainly thinking about Decentraland and the music festival, a big part of that is the dancing. And you can do lots of dancing when you're using your emotes. So I think that does make a difference when you're thinking about the kind of experience of just a 2D web browser based virtual world. But then also when I am playing VR ping pong, for instance, then being able to see the movement of someone's hands when they're kind of celebrating a shot that they got against me, or wandering around Horizon Worlds and being able to wave at people or walk kind of closer and further and have that much more tactile experience, I do find also really engaging. So I'm of the mind that it isn't one or the other. It's not a winner takes all. We'll have some browser-based virtual worlds. We'll have some VR-based virtual worlds. Some will be better for other experiences than other.
Good answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a good question, Mike. Thank you very much, Tara. This has been a very interesting space. The last question that I have is can you share like some tips now that we're slowly making this transition? Can you share some tips for maintaining a work-life balance in a metaverse-centric work landscape? And what do you have any metaverse projects or platform that you are most excited about that you can also share with us?
So it's a great question about maintaining a work-life balance. I think I'm probably the worst person to ask this question to, because I think it's Gartner predicts like 25% of people will spend at least an hour a day in the metaverse. I mean, I think I'm kind of personally holding that stat up and going well above. As I said, I spent Monday afternoon doing a VR workout. I meant to do that for like 20 minutes. An hour later, I'm still smashing these orbs in in the metaverse workout. I'm forever playing kind of ping pong, meeting friends, going into Decentraland to discover new places, spending time in brand new metaverses, trying to think about how criminals are using them. So I'd kind of say that for me, work-life balance isn't in metaverse and out of metaverse. It's really, how do I have time in the metaverse or out the metaverse for work, and in the metaverse or out the metaverse for life? In the same way that I think when we consider, what a work-life balance would be from a mobile phone, well, we use our mobile phones for kind of a bit of both. So I'd actually say the best tip for kind of maintaining maybe not work-life balance, but kind of keeping abreast of what's happening with the metaverse at large, whilst also not getting too burnt out or getting eye burn, is going in there, is trying new stuff, making sure that you are putting a bit of time aside to go into metaverses, wander around, see what they can do, chat to people in there. You can go into a metaverse and a virtual world and think it's really boring. And then you start speaking to someone and they'll be like, oh, follow me, I'll show you a really great build, or oh, head this way, I'll explain how this works, or oh no, if you want to jump, you got to press the space bar, that's much more fun, or press shift and you can run around. It makes it so much easier to discover cool things. So for me, I think it's not about trying to kind of balance between metaverse and non-metaverse. It's about trying to bring, for most people, actually more metaverse into their life, trying it out much more. And I think on the project side, for me, there's so many virtual worlds that are launching at the moment. It's kind of almost impossible to keep up from a project perspective. So I'm more actually focused on the kind of brands and keeping a track of what brands are doing in the metaverse. And Coke is doing some really good things. So I actually don't drink Coca-Cola. I don't like the taste of it. But they do really cool wearables in various different virtual worlds. They have really thought about NFT drops. They're really trying to think about how they can build social engagement in the kind of Coke brand at large, which has a huge pedigree around the world. I mean, everyone can recognize Coca-Cola. So they're a really interesting one, I think, to follow, because they are so premium. They have such good brand trust, but they're willing to try things a little bit different. Same with Adidas, actually. they're really pushing ahead and thinking about kind of the metaverse at large. Other than that, I think it's going to get quite specific in terms of the industries people are in. Like if you are in the world of medicine, then actually the kind of augmented reality route is probably where the most excited projects are, thinking about how you can simulate surgery, for instance, and do training. There's some really exciting stuff that's happening there. If you're in the kind of fashion space, and as I mentioned, Adidas are a huge leader. I think keeping a track of what they're doing is really excited. If you're in the education space, there's loads of cool stuff people are doing to engage the kind of Gen Zs, whether that's like going into Roblox, for instance, and like talking to people. There was a fantastic podcast I listened to the other day where I think it was a teacher, and he was talking to one of his students, and they were really excited to get home because they were meeting a bunch of their friends. I think it was in Roblox, and they were going to play school, which is where they went into a build in the metaverse, which was designed to look like a school, and they all took it in turns, like teaching each other something. And he was like, "Oh, so you're going to go home and play being in school? Amazing. Wow." So I think really just kind of exploring all those builds that are happening within some of the places that Gen Z, millennials are meeting in is a really good way to get excited about what's happening, but also stay up to date because it is a fast-paced moving industry. And that's, I think, what makes it so exciting.
I think we lost Rita again. One thing I find interesting about the world's here, and we have people and groups coming in to take a look. After they walk around, everybody sort of joins by sitting in a space, sitting in a chair. And we have one other space that has a big open room with a semicircular table. And for the first time, people were in there, immediately sat down as they're waiting for a lecture. And so it's interesting that the culture of what a meeting is and where you're sitting, and we're all sitting, where you could get up and jump around and run around the thing and still hear you as a part of the collective audio. It's just very interesting how people react to being in the metaverse and the cultural aspects of it.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that I'm really excited for a lot of like meta anthropological studies to happen, because there is culture in metaverses and it's really quite specific. There's things that if you do in a virtual world are considered rude, but not in another virtual world. So in like, for instance, in Decentraland, if someone kind of brings their avatar to stand on top of you, you just kind of assume they're a bit of a noob and they're not really sure how to navigate. Now, if someone does that in, say, Horizon World, they might have done it by a mistake, but because of the VR aspect, it feels super intrusive and you're like, whoa, back off, my friend. So there are definitely cultural kind of elements and quirks about how we interact in the metaverse. And a lot of it is still being developed, which I think is super exciting. But I do think that makes it really interesting to see how people engage. And, especially when you consider worlds like this, where you can walk around, you get kind of groups that go together and have a chat. You might walk up and be like, oh, hi, like introduce yourself. And I think that's like just super exciting to see how people engage in a metaverse, what they do in the metaverse, how they interact. I wrote a piece quite a while ago now about something called the Protagus effect, which is where you and your behavior will differ depending on your avatar design. So those who created taller avatars for themselves, for instance, came across as much more confident and commanding, and people listened to them much more because in IRL, in real life, we kind of associate being taller with being maybe a little bit more dominating or in charge. And so there's, the concepts that I'm sure many people know of someone in a white lab coat, you automatically assume is just really smart. But in the metaverse, you can wear whatever you want. You can be a lizard in the metaverse if you want. And so there's going to be these brand new kind of Protagus effects that we think about of, someone with a dragon avatar, do we assume that they're always like a little bit bossy? Someone that wears metallic clothing, I can see Brianna over there with a fantastic purple metallic skirt, which very much influenced my change to metallic trousers. What does it mean if someone wears metallic clothing? Is there any kind of personality trait we associate with that? And all of this still needs building out. We need all these new social norms and cultural norms, and that's a lot for kind of everyone, here and watching to define as much as being part of it.
Really, really good answer. Very interesting, and I think appreciate the idea that people are what people are, and that they will behave sort of hopefully better than they do in the real world in some cases. In any case, we reached the end of the hour. I think Rita just rejoined us for the end. And Tara, we appreciate you joining this Third Academy show very much. And Rita, you have any closing words? Well, I guess you still.
Yeah. Thanks. I just want to say, yeah. Oh, can you hear me now? Oh,
Yes.
well.
We can hear
Okay.
you.
Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you so much, Tara. I am going to go back and be listening to all the times that I missed out. This has been a very interesting space. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you for our other events in the future if you have the time to. Yeah, we've come to the end of the space. Thanks.
Right. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, Tara.